And I'm going to hand over to Jason, who is from East Nuke Seaweed, as I said, and he's going to run the session.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm just putting on the gallery so I can see a few faces that I'm looking at, just not talking to myself. Nice to see a few familiar faces. Hello, Kim, and from Glasgow, and Angelique. We're friends on Instagram. She's another forager. I'm sure I'd recognise a few other faces. I have to scroll through all the screens to see everyone. But thank you, Chris, for that introduction. Nice to be working with transition. So what we're going to do today, we're pretty short on time really, and there's lots of people, and obviously we could talk about this kind of stuff for hours on end, but we've only got an hour today. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to share my screen. I've got a quick few slides. It's a quick introduction of myself initially. So it's very short, don't worry. And then we're going to talk a little bit about sustainability, as Chris said, and safety as well. So obviously I want to encourage people to go out and pick seaweed and use your own seaweed once we can travel, but it's safety as well. Safety is important, and as well as sustainability is very important. So if my mission works and a good percentage of Scotland starts harvesting their own seaweed from the beaches, then we obviously will need to be, much more mindful. At the moment, I get away with a little bit because I tend to be, there's not huge crowds down there. But so anyway, I'll stop talking. Let's find the share screen. And I'll just move that, and I'll do this one, present. Good old Canva. Right, so here we are, East Nuke Seaweed. There's a few pictures of the previous years. We've taken some groups out. So this is what we're going to cover, a little bit about me, seaweed classification, intertidal zone, thriving in the intertidal ebook. So that's a wee book I've written that will give you more information. People can have a look at that at the end on the website. All wet safety guide. So that's another little 11-page safety guide. We'll quickly cover that. Short clip. So we're going to do a little walk through the intertidal. We'll do that afterwards. And then I'll just talk quickly about some alternative sources of seaweed. Next steps, then we're going to do lots of questions and answers because, like I say, we can only talk about so much. So a little bit about me. So I'm a bit of a lifelong forager, particular interest in the coast and seaweed. So I lived in Glasgow. I've been in Scotland for 11 years, and I lived in Glasgow for around 6 years, and lots of good foraging to be had, a lot of urban foraging. Really enjoyed Glasgow, nice people, really enjoyed it over there, but I am from New Zealand, so I did miss the coast. So an opportunity came for me to come up here, and I came up, and I've kind of fallen in love with the area, and fallen in love with the Scottish seaweed. My first story of foraging, actually, I was about 2, and I ran away from home in a little strop over something, and my mum was looking for me. They're looking for me everywhere, and they eventually found me in the hedge, asleep outside just down the road, and having gorged myself on all the gooseberries in the hedge, and I'd fallen asleep, and so I was quite comfortable there. And that's the story my mum always tells on my birthday. Studied permaculture and horticulture. I worked for many years in commercial agriculture and as a domestic gardener as well. I worked on sustainability and community projects in Glasgow for about 5 years. Most of the time I was there, and I can't see the bottom thing. Professional seaweed harvesting manager for 3 years. So that's what brought me up to this area. It was about 4 years ago now that I came up here to be a seaweed harvesting manager for a Scottish company. And they're unfortunately not actually operating in this area anymore. But we left on good terms, and but by then I'd fallen in love with the area, and I intimately knew 30 miles of coastline. So I decided, why not share this with the people of Scotland? We've got all this amazing seaweed right on our back doorstep there, and yet few people know about what we can actually take and how to take it and on all the rest of it. So that's how East Nuke Seaweed was born. It was actually a cold February morning. I was up to my ankles on my own down the beach freezing, thinking, wow, this is amazing. I really want to share this with people. So yeah, February you can get out. It's a bit cold. The Association of Forages, I joined up these guys last year. So if people know about them or don't know about them, check out their website, lots of good information on there. The Association of Forages was established in 2015 to provide support its members and serve as a coherent voice to promote and support responsible foraging. So you get a lot of people out there foraging. These are a group of guys that have all come together. You've got the likes of Monica Wild, Mark Williams, all the greats, and myself. So that's really good. And all members have a common interest in caring for the environment and the natural world, and an awakening an interest and love of nature in the public. So, you know, very much the Association of Forages are very much into sustainability, but also sharing what's out there. So there's a lot of education that goes on. They have some commercial forages as well that do supply. Right, so there we go. That's the boring bit. Now we can talk about the seaweed. So basically there are 3 types of seaweeds. You get the reds, the greens, and the browns. They're all pretty obvious to look at, those ones. It's not always as obvious as you'd think. The 3 types of seaweeds. So the reds, they're the most diverse, and they have an estimated 7,000 species worldwide. They are also the oldest, with fossil records going back 1.2 billion years. As with greens, the color comes from chlorophyll A and B. It's found in land plants. Dulse and lava come some of the most well-known. So there's dulse there. That's a red one. We'll talk about that a bit later on. Lava is the other one. I haven't actually got a picture there of lava, but for any Welshmen out there or anyone that goes to Wales, they love their lava bread down there. But for anyone who's actually eaten sushi, the nori, Japanese call it nori, very similar to lava that we have growing right here. So that's a nice favorite. Greens. The greens mostly occur in fresh water, but a small percentage are found around the intertidal. And the greens, I mean, most people that have been to the beach will probably have seen some bright green seaweed floating by. And it's kind of the green seaweeds that people think of as seaweed, because you get a few varieties that you'll find in the Chinese, but actually most seaweeds, regardless of the color, will actually turn green when you cook them. So maybe the seaweed that you're thinking of as green, it wasn't green when it was growing, but it's green once it gets cooked. The interesting thing with this one here, that sea lettuce there, is that it actually keeps that very bright, vibrant green, no matter what you do to it, almost no matter what you do to it. You can deep fry it, you can roast it, toast it, and all the rest, and it keeps that really nice bright green. So that's a really good one for color on your dish. The color comes from the same pigments as the red seaweeds, and land plants are believed to have evolved from them. High levels of nitrogen can cause them to grow in abundance. You can see that bottom picture there. That's an area near to me that's just covered in green seaweed. That's a bit of a alarm bells, actually, when you see all green, because this particular seaweed, the greens like a lot of nitrogen. If there's an area where it's mostly green seaweeds, probably a lot of nitrogen going in there, and they grow really well because they love the nitrogen, and then they smother all the other seaweeds. They sort of take all the oxygen out. 3 types of seaweed still. Browns. So the browns, these are the ones that people notice the most when you go to the beach. So the big kelps, the racks, you know, they're the ones that most people would probably think of as seaweed, because they're the ones that are the most obvious when you get to the beach. There's approximately 150 species around Britain. They tend to be the most obvious seaweed when visiting the beach. Not always brown. They can also be olive green, like this one here, the sea spaghetti. Color comes from pigments called chlorophyll C and fuchsianthum. I have to learn how to say that word properly, won't I? It's been a while because I've been stuck at home, not talking to other humans. Includes some of the largest seaweeds, kelps, and the abundant racks. So that they have actually, the chlorophyll and the pigments that come from them are actually completely different than land plants. And the brown seaweeds actually aren't even a plant per se. We just say that because it's easier. So you've got the intertidal zone. So this is where you find the seaweeds. So here we've split the zones up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you've got the splash zone. So that's basically the beach or the sand dunes. So you get a lot of things up there, sea kale, lots of plants that aren't seaweeds, but they don't mind a bit of salt and you know, the stormy wet conditions that you get down on the beach, sandy soil and all the rest of it. Then you get your upper zone, your middle zone, your lower zone, your subtidal. So your subtidal is when you get very much out deep. The subtidal will actually only be exposed to fresh air, you know, daylight several times in the year. When you get the big super low tides, which happen, you get a handful of those every year. So the subtidal will most often actually be underwater. So you won't often see all those. So on those odd occasions, so spring tides, we've got good tides coming up. That's the opportunity actually to get out into the subtidal, and you can be walking around in that area. And there may never have been humans walking there, you know, for thousands of years, since Doggerland would be the last time somebody was walking around out there. And the upper zone is an area that won't often get submerged. So it is most often actually out of the water. But you do get some certain seaweeds up there, channel rack. So all the seaweeds like slightly different conditions. They've all adapted to certain areas. So your middle zone and your lower zone, parts of your lower zone, they will constantly be getting exposed to sun half the day and air and water the other half of the day. So they're constantly changing. And, you know, the intertidal is a very dynamic zone area, but the plants is harsh, and the seaweeds have had to really adapt to these changing conditions. So, you know, a lot of respect to them. It's reminds me of the Scots. This unique, so here we go. This is the Thriving Intertidal. So this is a little pamphlet that I wrote. It's 52 pages. Tells you, oops. It's really, the unique 52-page guide is packed with accessible information and pictures to help you work with the dynamism of the tides, the essential tools and best approaches you need to survive and thrive when seeking wild seaweed. This guide is all about laying the ground rules that will enable you to get out into the intertidal safely and respectfully. It is essential information, and I include it on all my workshops. And it's very much written from a permaculture perspective of earth care, people care, and fair share. And it's not so much a guide on seaweeds per se, it's more of a guide to how to go about to sustainably harvest them and keep yourself safe while you're out there. So the thing is, I had a guy come on one of my online workshops last year, and he's a mountain guide. He's been a mountain guide for 20 years. He's a mushroom forager. You know, he's very experienced in some of the most hazardous places. And he actually done a few workshops with me, and we got to know each other quite well, and he sends me mushrooms and I send him seaweed because he's a bit landlocked. But anyway, he was saying the first time when he finished the workshops and actually went out on his own, he was down on the coast, and within 10 minutes, he was out of sight. You know, he was 2 miles out, and within 10 minutes, he was completely out of sight. No one could see him. He couldn't see anyone else. And he's completely surrounded by the slippery rocks and seaweed, and hard rocks and slippery seaweed. And that's when it came home to him, like all the safety stuff that Jason's been getting on to me about. I'm glad he did, you know. And then the tide turns, you know, you've got basically a few hours out there. You know, the tide, it's best for you to follow the tide out. Then you've got half an hour, the tide sits there, then it starts coming back, and it's going to claim it all back to under the water. So you don't want to be there. So anyway, those things, those documents, I talk a bit more about that, but you know, it is a potentially dangerous environment. If you're up a mountain and you slip and you hurt your ankle, you know, you sit there and you ring somebody and say, help, I've hurt my ankle, can you come get me? If you're out in the intertidal and you do an ankle, Neptune's coming in to claim his land back, mate. So, you know, you've got to get out of there. So they're all things to think about. Being in the intertidal zone can be an enjoyable, enriching experience, despite all those horror stories I just told you. It can also be treacherous without some knowledge and planning. So this is an 11-page guide that I've put together, come up with a little anagram to remember the things to think of. So you've got an ally, so somebody who knows where you're going and is maybe expecting a phone call, you know, when you come back. Location, so think about where you're going to go. Good to know your locale as well, you know how the tides work in that area and all the rest of it. Lunch, so it's you can easily forget while you're out there. You know, you can be out there, you think, oh, I'm going to go down for 10 minutes, have a look around. 2 hours later, you're like, oh, the tide's chasing me off. You're starving by then. So take a bit of lunch with you, take a snack, but it's also good to remember lunch as in only take enough for one meal. You know, take enough for your lunch. Don't go down there and pick bags and bags of it. You know, it's about moderation as well. So pick a bit for, you know, enough for you and maybe a bit to share with your elderly neighbor or whatever, but moderation. Weather, obviously, that's pretty obvious. You've got to think about the weather. I mean, you've got to do that just to go to the co-op in Scotland. The equipment, take the right stuff with you. And tides is obviously very important as well. So that's just a way to remember all the things. And for anyone that is interested in getting the all wet guide, all you have to do is sign up to my mailing list at some stage, and you get that given to you for free. On my workshops, I'm committed to equipping everyone with a healthy respect for the abundant, sometimes hazardous and consistently awe-inspiring place that is where land, sea, and sky meet. So I want you to get out there, but I don't want to see you on the news. Right, alternative sources for seaweed. So obviously we can't all get out onto the coast right now, and not everyone lives 2 minutes away from it like I do. So there is other ways if you can't get out and get your own online. So if you're going to buy seaweed online, and there's lots of sources to buy it online, try and get as local as possible. I mean, I can go online right now and I can buy seaweed from Canada. In fact, I could actually probably buy seaweed from New Zealand if I was feeling a little bit homesick. But there's actually good places in Ireland, much nearer. There's not too many Scottish suppliers, to be honest, but you've got some down in Cornwall. You know, so Britain and Ireland is obviously much more local than China or New Zealand or Canada. So try and buy local, check for their sustainable, that they do sustainable harvesting methods. So a lot of seaweeds are hand-picked, and the harvesting that we used to do, it was all hand-picked. So no machinery was involved. So, you know, if they don't say it on their website, ask them. And does it have organic accreditation as well? So again, seaweeds, wild seaweeds are generally going to be organic. You can get farmed seaweed as well. And seaweed farming should be, you know, no added stuff, but humans being humans, we always find a way to add nasties, it seems. So again, if they don't say that they're organic accredited, ask them. And you know, there's plenty that do, so they're the ones to choose because you want to support them, not the ones that are using machines and spraying stuff all over it. Asian groceries, obviously a really good place to get seaweed because, you know, they've never lost the tradition of using seaweed. They've got thousands of different varieties, but again, Asian grocery, you know, check the use by dates. Species may be different as well. So the species they have over there are a little bit different. That's, you know, I mean, it's seaweed and it's edible and it's going to be good, but you know, you might find something that you think is similar to what we've got here and it's actually different. So that's just something to think about when you're in your recipes or whatever. The exact origin is sometimes difficult to know. So, you know, you don't know what sort of muddy puddle it's come from over in China. And, you know, maybe they're not sending the best of their stuff over to us, and often high air miles. So that's another thing to think about. So, you know, most of the species, most of the varieties that you can get in the Chinese groceries, you can actually get something very similar growing right here in Scotland, you know, and it's a walk or a bus trip or a bike ride or, you know, or a drive and a nice day and ice cream and fish and chips as well. So something to think about. There we go. So you join the mailing list, you'll get the all wet for free. Buy Thriving into Title, it's only 11 quid. Book an online workshop, come on the rocks workshop, So no, that's enough upselling is. see if I can, how do I stop that? There we go. That was pretty quick, didn't take too long. So now we're actually going to watch a nice video that I made, and I actually made most of this video last year. It was this time last year that I made it. So it's really good for this time of year. So it's really showing us the sort of things that we can find out there in Untitled at the minute. Maybe before we watch the video, we could take a few quick questions if anyone's got.
We did have a couple come through. So first one was how does the water pollution affect the seaweed? Affect whether the seaweed is healthy to eat and organic? How do you know where to harvest?
Yes, so that's a good question, and I get asked that one a lot. So up here in the East Nuke, I'm very lucky. We've got very clean water up here. So when I was commercially harvesting, we would actually be checking the water every month. We would do water testing. So they had to do that part of their thing. But that was really good for me. So for in 3 years that I worked with them, we never had a bad water quality thing come in. One thing I'll say is that you shouldn't harvest seaweed after heavy rain, prolonged heavy rain. So say 24 hours is what we say of prolonged heavy rain, because that is runoff coming from the land. So, you know, because we've built concrete everywhere and there's so many of us, when it rains, it's got nowhere to go anymore. So it all runs to the ocean, and that brings pollutions with it. So even when we're commercially harvesting, we wouldn't harvest after 24 hours of rain. So I used to look forward to heavy rain. It doesn't happen very often in the East Nuke, because we'd be up at bloody 6 in the morning to harvest our seaweed. So yeah, after heavy rain, obviously as well, you've got to use your common sense a little bit. So I don't harvest. There's areas, although we've never had a bad water quality come back in the East Nuke, there's certain areas I don't go. I don't go to the built up areas. So I try and keep it, you know, away from towns and villages a little bit. Freshwater, where there's freshwater, the drills coming into the ocean, that again, that can bring in pollutants from, you know, inland. You don't know what the farmer's sticking into his the freshwater stream that's running through. Look out for those areas of green, you know, where there's lots of green seaweed, that's high nitrogen. Look out for that. And, you know, a good place to start is talking to SEPA, Scottish Environmental Protection Agency. So they, you know, you can ring them up and say, well, look, I'm in a certain area. Can you tell me a bit about the water quality in my area? And I've got to give this information out. This is stuff on the public arena, so they can't say, well, it's none of your business. You say, well, it is, mate, because you know, I pay your wages. But you could probably say it nicely. And hi, Anne, I just saw you there. And so, you know, you can start with those guys, your councils, your local councils as well. They'll have information about, you know, any accidents that have happened in the area. So really, in Scotland, we're pretty lucky. If you keep away from those built up areas, talk to your SEPA, talk to your local councils, see if and ask them what the water quality is like where you are. Look out for the green, nasty seaweeds. Well, when I say nasty, that's not fair, because some of the green seaweeds are beautiful. But, you know, overabundance of green seaweeds, that's an indicator that there's high nitrogen there. So, you know, if you're really worried, you could take your own water samples. There's you can find them online places, or again, talk to SEPA and say, look, I want to get a water test. I'm worried about the quality in my area. Can you do it? You know, and they've got to do this stuff because it's you know, it's for our own protection. So yeah, so that sort of, hope that sums up a little bit.
Thank you. Angelique asks, what is a rack?
A rack, so that's a type of seaweed. So the fucus is the Latin name. So you'll see in the video, you'll see one of these. But so you've got serrated rack is Fucus serratus. So that's it's just a type of seaweed. It's a brown seaweed. They look green. They're the ones you find them. You know, most beaches, you go into your middle zone, and it's just covered in racks and fucus, you know, all over. And you get the ones with the bubbles on there, and you get serrated edges. They come in lots of different ones, and actually, they're really good. They're an natural antiseptic. So we used to actually use racks for cleaning our equipment. and they're good for bathing. So a lot of these bath bombs you buy from the body shop and that, so I'm told. I mean, I've never had one. You know, there's racks they'll use in those. They use very small percentage of them in there. But I mean, I'm lucky. I go down here and I've trained my children up and say, right, Dad's having a bath. Get down to the beach, pick Dad a big bag of rack, or just chuck it straight in the bath. You know, in the hot water. So that's a really nice trick to do. You can dry it out, and you'll see some in the video. Yeah, so that's a nice thing to do. So eating it's really good. You know, I mean, I promote eating seaweed, and I eat seaweed pretty much every day, and sometimes 3 times a day. My kids used to love it. They're a little bit, oh no, more seaweed again, Dad. So I've got lots of subtle ways that I put it in the meals that they don't even know. So they eat more seaweed than they realize. But I use it in the garden as well. So seaweed's amazing in the garden. And, you know, if you 2 weeks ago or a week ago, actually, we had big storms here, loads of seaweed all washed up. And, you know, the way nature does it is that basically you get the tides change every day. And every fortnight they have spring tides. So you get bigger tides, so higher tides, the tide springs forth, but you also get lower tides. So on those big spring tides, the seaweed will wash further up, and then it goes away and doesn't hit it for 2 weeks or a month. So, you know, the seaweed starts to break down. So there's lots of natural chemicals in seaweed that help to strengthen young roots of plants and bring on young plants and all that. And the racks are particularly good for that as well. And so, you know, seaweed, I mean, you go online and you look up organic stuff for my garden and it comes up seaweed this and seaweed that. So there's lots of different uses you can do with that. There's a whole article on my website actually about gardening using seaweed in the garden. So that's quite relevant right now because it's spring. Well, it feels a bit more like spring the last few days. So yeah, so there's lots of uses of seaweed, but you know, the kitchen's one of the main ones. But I promote seaweed to be used everywhere.
Cool. Thank you.
So,
I just get a couple more questions and we'll go to the video and we'll return to questions. But Nikki Ken asks, hi Nikki, how long does dried seaweed last if you harvest it and dry it your own?
Well, I've eaten 15-year-old seaweed, 15-year-old dried badly, stored badly seaweed. It was 15 years old and it was good. I've got a friend over in Norway who he has a jar of seaweed. It's not dried, it's pickled. And he only takes from it on his birthday and special occasions. And he said that's, how old did he say that was? Like 20 years or something like that, you know, ancient. But dried seaweed, to answer your question, so if you buy seaweed from the supermarket, they've got to have a 2-year shelf life on there, you know, and that's not because of the seaweed's going to go off or anything, as long as it's been stored correctly. That's because I've got to do that because of our modern day, you know, that's what we do. So there's a good trick as well. You can go foraging at the health shop or foraging at the supermarket. When the seaweed's coming to the end of its date, you know, you can take it. There's not going to be nothing wrong with it because you can, you know, you should be able to store seaweed indefinitely if it's dried properly and stored properly. It's going to last indefinitely, really. I mean, I can't answer that question because I've never, like I said, the oldest I've ever had was 15 years and it was fine. Because, you know, salt's got a lot of natural sugar, well, they have got natural sugars, but they've got salts and they've got all those different, you know, potassium and magnesium, all those different things on there. And that really helps to preserve it. So once you've dried it, as long as you keep dampness off it, it's going to last indefinitely. Another thing that people do, so I've got a friend who's a Japanese guy, and when he gets his sushi sheets, he will actually, as soon as the packet is opened, he freezes them, and that keeps it fresher as well. So I generally, I've got a vacuum packer that will actually take air out of my jars. So as an extra precaution, I dry my seaweed, stick into these jars, and then I vacuum them, pull all the air out of them. And, you know, they'll last forever. And actually most seaweeds, if the longer they are, you know, the longer they've been stored, you know, it's a bit like whiskey. You know, you stick it in the right conditions and you age it, it tastes better. It's the same with seaweed. So to answer your question, yep, it should last indefinitely as long as you go about it the right way.
Cool. Is the seaweed in the subtidal zone better quality?
Well, that's debatable. So, you know, different seaweeds in different zones are different. They have different qualities. And like I said, the different zones, you know, the lower zone, the intertidal, the very low zone, the laminarian zone, hardly ever gets exposed to the air, whereas the upper zone is mostly in the air. So all the seaweeds have got different qualities of how they've come about to, you know, to survive in that certain zone that they live in. So there's some beautiful seaweeds that you can actually get up on the upper zone that are barely ever covered by water. But some of my most favorite do come from the lower zone as well. So really it's no, I would say. It's debatable. You know, something that's getting washed by the fresh water every day, that's, you know, it's different than the stuff that's sitting up drier all day. But I mean, it's, you know, spinach never gets washed and we all eat that, you know, land plants. So they've got different qualities. So you can't really say it's better quality. No, they're just different.
Cool, thank you. I think we'll go to the video now, just so we get through that, and then we've got a few more questions to come back to afterwards. So don't worry if your question hasn't been answered.
No worries. But that's, you can see why I only kept my video for 5 minutes, because I talked. Right, let's see if I can find that video. Share screen.
Good morning, here we are in the East Nuke. I'm out right on the edge of the littoral zone here, right on in the deepest part of the intertidal. I'm going to make a quick video, show you what's about.
The laminaria zone is where the forest kelp is. The Hyperborea has rigid stipes and you can see it standing up as the tide goes out. At the start of the laminaria zone grows kombu. It has a bendy stipe, so it lays over when the tide goes out. Here we have false Irish moss and Irish moss. They both look very similar and they can both be used to make carrageen pudding. Irish moss is not quite as abundant in East Nuke. Hiding in among all this is royal fernweed, another seaweed which looks fairly similar to the other two, but with a bit of training you can soon learn to spot the difference. Just a word of warning, keep an eye out for waves at all times. Most of the fucus is found in the upper and middle zone. However, you will find Fucus serratus out here in the lower zone. Though it appears green, it's classified as a brown seaweed, and it's also full of antioxidants, making it good for bathing. There's lots of dulse at the moment, recovering from the winter. By autumn it will be nice and long, which will be the best time for picking it. It grows both symbiotically on other seaweeds as well as straight on the rock. I can see the waves are creeping up on me here. I better head in. Here we can see a nice patch of sea spaghetti. This will actually grow up to 1.5 meters in length, so you can see it's quite young at the moment. It's normally about Easter when I start harvesting it, and you can pick it right up until the end of summer. It works really well as a gluten-free alternative to spaghetti, and it's also delicious and crunchy eaten straight off the rocks. It starts out like a little button, and the fruiting body, which we eat, grows out from the center of that. Here we have a little patch of pepper dulse, which is best picked in the winter when it's dark and crunchy. It's starting to yellow up already, but by summer it will be yellow and mushy on the rocks. Here now we have one of my favourites, Daberlocks, also known as Alaria Esculanta. This grows up to 2 metres and is very distinctive with a midrib down the middle. It has a short picking season, which is around 6 weeks in April and May. Here at the base, we have the Sporangia. This is responsible for next year's growth. So when harvesting, be very careful not to disturb and take on these small amounts from different areas.
There we go. How was that?
Yeah, that was great. I echo what Angelique says, that it was a nice trip to the seaside there. It made me feel a little bit itchy feet there. I want to get my feet wet.
Yeah, apologies to all the landlocked people on screen. I'm very lucky. That's literally a minute from my front door. Yeah, it's really nice. So I made that video actually as part of my online series that I were doing last year and still do. So the idea was to try and give people an experience of actually being out there. So for me, I mean, the way I learn is that I can read it in a book 10 times, and I'll still have to go back and look again. But if I'm actually out there and I touch it and I feel it and I nibble on it, I'll remember forever after that. So, for me, it's very hands-on, foraging and all the ways I learn most things. So, but, it's trying to get that little bit of a mixture at the moment because, obviously not everyone can actually get to the beach. So I hope you all enjoyed that.
Yeah, I'm a bit jealous. My brother's on at the minute and he's up in Carnoustie, just on the coast. So I'm a bit jealous that he's going to go out this afternoon and pick some nice seaweeds.
Yeah, well, I'm from New Zealand, so I'm actually very difficult to please. So I want coast, at my front door, but I wanted forest and a mountain right at my back door. But, so Scotland, we're quite lucky here as well. And so East Nuke, beautiful beaches, really nice coastal area here. And if you sort of, close your eyes a little bit, you can really imagine you're out somewhere totally wild. But we do have to travel a little way to get to decent woodlands and decent mountains. We do have nice little woodlands fairly nearby, and I've got, Lomond, West Lomond and that. And, but, to get to proper mountains and proper woodlands, on the opposite, I've got to travel from here. So it's all a bit of balance, isn't it? But yeah.
Cool. Okay, well, I guess we'll return to some questions. We had a few coming in. I'm conscious you've only got about 15 minutes or so now, haven't you?
Yeah, roughly, but we'll see how it goes. I'm actually waiting on a call to go and do something. So if the call doesn't come, I can wait a bit longer.
Great. Okay. Just as well, before we go into questions, I'll be sharing links out as well. So there was the link to Jason's website. I'll be emailing that out when I email out a feedback form for you all to fill in. There will be links. I'll put them in the message as well as Jason's answering questions too. So just coming back to something about harvesting in areas near a harbour and pollution hazards. You said earlier, try and sort of avoid the built-up areas as much as possible. So I would say, yeah, try and avoid harbours as much as you can, I guess.
Yeah, and another word on that as well, actually, is that most of your seaweeds are annuals. So most of the seaweeds that we eat, like lava, dulse, sea spaghetti, the Alaria, all those ones that you saw in that video, most of those are all annuals. So they're only around for a short time. So if there is nasties in the water, they're not going to have a lot of time to actually absorb it. But some of the seaweeds, some of your racks are longer lived seaweeds. So knotted rack, which we didn't actually see in there, yeah, I've found one that was 12 years old, and they say they can live up to around about 15. So part of the job that seaweeds actually do in the ocean is filter the water. So they filter nasties out, and a lot of the brown seaweeds specifically, they act as a filter in the water. So some of these longer lived seaweeds, you have to be a bit wary that if there is, heavy metals or whatever in the water, then they have been around for longer, so they've had more opportunity to soak up some of those nasties. So when you do take racks, you tend to take the younger bits at the end of them. Don't take the longer stuff. But pretty much all the other seaweeds are annuals. So, and the Alaria, which is, grows up to 2 meters. That's that one. I love that one. There's a nice recipe for with ginger on my website, but that's a very short season. It's 6 weeks. It's not there. It's out in it's quite hard to get to because it's right on the edge of the mid and lower zone. So it's a bit hard to get to. So, yeah, but just with the racks, you do have to be a bit careful about. But that's part of the reason why people eat seaweeds, and the racks especially are actually good. So when you eat seaweeds, when you eat the racks, the browns, they do a similar thing that they do in the ocean, is what they say. So it will absorb any of those nasties, toxins and heavy metals that you've got in your body and your system, and then they'll soak it up, and then you'll exit it. So so one of the things to look out for is one of the benefits of it as well. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Kim asks, are there any to totally avoid poisonous ones? And I'm going to add to that as well. Can you, does it change the safety of it, whether it's growing or whether it's floating? So like if it's been knocked off the rock in a storm or something, should you avoid that as well?
Yeah, well, officially we say don't eat floating seaweed. This has been recorded, so it's not going to be much of a secret, but the odd occasion I do take a bit of floating seaweed because I sort of know what I'm doing, I guess. But, after a big storm, you will find sugar kelp washed up, and it's been washed up that day. I take it home. But the official stance is don't take washed up seaweed because you don't know where it's been. You don't know where it's come from. You don't know what seagulls pooped on it. And, so that's the official stance. Don't take floating seaweed. And poisonous seaweeds, the good news is that there's no toxic seaweeds per se. So by rights, you can just eat your way up the shore and trying that out. And, I love it when I have 6-year-olds come out on the workshops, because the 6-year-olds will always find a piece of seaweed that you don't know and say, have you ever tried this one? What does this one taste like? And I say, I don't know, mate, let's try it. So, the workshops are great. You're always learning stuff, and it tends to be the 6-year-olds, but they're not shy to say it. But, so there is a seaweed called stringy acid-weed, which grows all over the world. There's about 100 species worldwide. It does grow in Britain, but the good news is that it grows deep, and it's very fragile when it gets exposed to oxygen. So it grows down deep. When it's exposed to oxygen, it tends to implode. But it's so as the name implies, it's stringy, and it actually has sulfuric acid in it. So I've never tried it, but I'm told that if you nibble a wee bit, it's because I've never found it here in the East Nuke, so that's good news. And I have looked for it, but I'm told that if you were to nibble on a bit, it's very similar to getting the old 9-volt batteries. Don't know if anyone else used to do this in the 80s, but for a buzz, you get the 9-volt batteries and stick it on your tongue, and you get that fuzzy feeling. I've said that to younger generation. They're like, "What? What's a 9-volt battery?" But it's a bit like that. So it's not like mushrooms. It's not like picking the mushrooms. Mushrooms, you have to really know what you're doing. You have to really identify the thing and make sure that you don't have, and there's mushrooms out there that, this one's edible, most delicious mushroom, and this one looks exactly the same, but it's super deadly and it'll kill you. You don't have to worry with the seaweeds. The main things to look out for with seaweeds is the actual environment you're picking it from. That's where the danger is going to come. And pollutants, and I mean, the worst pollutants really out there, you know, not having faith that the water that you're picking from is pretty clean, is bird poop. I mean, bird poop's pretty nasty. So if you get there, and seal pee as well. Seal pee stinks. So you'll know if you're in an area of seals. And in the winter, you have to look out for them as well, because I mean, if they're nesting, you know, they'll chase you. I've been chased up the beach by seals. And they're pretty big seals you get around here as well. So, but the seaweeds themselves, yeah, stringy acid weed's really the only one to look out for. And, you know, you'll know, because it's stringy, it's sort of a bit burny. I'm eating it and it tastes a bit like 9-volt battery. So, you know, if you do find a bit of that stringy acid weed, please let me know and I'll come and have a taste as well myself. Apparently in Malaysia or the Philippines, they've actually got dessert they make with that with their variety of stringy acid weed. They use those sulfuric acid properties for like a lemon juice. But yeah, so hope that answers your question.
Oh, thank you. So are there any seaweeds that doesn't need drying? I assume you can eat most of them without drying.
You can eat most seaweeds without drying them. Some seaweeds are better used when you dry them. So most seaweeds, because they've got those nice, you know, the salts and all those other, the magnesium and all those things on there, they will last in your fridge for about up to 5 days fresh. So, you know, what I tell people is when you pick your seaweed, don't take it home straight away and wash it under fresh water, because that tap water is, well, first of all, you know, I don't know, do they put fluoride in it over here? But, you know, the tap water you actually got, you know, it's less natural than the ocean. And you're washing off all those salts and all those nice things that are actually going to help to preserve it. So you're better to leave it in, you know, with a little bit of salty water on it that you've picked it. So leave it in there, don't wash it. It should, most varieties will last in your fridge for up to about 5 days before you have to start drying them. Obviously, you're better to try and dry it straight away. And one word of warning as well with seaweed, you know, as with a lot of things, you'll go there and you'll pick it and you go, oh, and you're enjoying it, and then you go, oh, and you'll keep picking, and oh, this is so much fun, and then you'll find something and then keep picking, and then you get home, you got bags and bags of it, and you go, oh my gosh, I picked way too much. So, you know, you do have to be a little bit careful of that. And obviously you don't want to take it because it's taking too much seaweed is, I mean, it's not the end of the world for you at home because you just stick it in the garden, or, you know, I can put it back to the ocean. But the thing is, you're taking habitat for little creatures. There's loads of little things that live in there. That's their habitat. That's their breakfast. That's their breeding ground. It's everything for them. It's their whole universe, you know. So if you take too much of it away, you know, you're blowing it for them. But so, you know, a bit of moderation, but it is easy to get carried away. So at the moment, you'll get away with it. Like I say, there's a small percentage of us out there at the moment picking seaweed daily. But yeah, all going to plan, and we're all out there picking lots of seaweed, and the big seaweed companies gone out of business because everyone's picking their own. We'll have to be a little bit more careful about it. I can't remember the question now. I hope I answered it.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did it. You answered it very well. Can you recommend any good ID books for medicinal purposes?
Yeah, there is a lot of good books, medicinal. I got a good one Christmas time, actually. I got a really nice book at Christmas. It was a work one. They didn't know what else to give me, but it was a perfect book. I can't remember the name of it. I haven't got it here. What I should do is I'll send some titles out to you to send off to when you send out the.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Yeah, because yeah, medicinal, but you know, it's I've really seen a lot of people using seaweed in art as well recently. Artwork, so you can use it for all sorts. But yeah, I have got a good book there, medicinal. Up until a few years ago, it was actually difficult to get seaweed books that weren't just, you know, boring marine biology science books. You know, and most of them didn't talk about the edibility. And even actually up into, I've got a Foraging for Free. Everyone maybe heard of Foraging for Free, brilliant little pocket book. Well, I've actually got an edition that goes back when they didn't have seaweed in it. It's before 2000, so but the Foraging for Free now has seaweeds in it as well. Since about 2007, I think they've had a seaweed chapter in there, and it's getting better and better. And there's lots of books you can get now that actually talk much more specifically about eating seaweed and the species to go for when eating it. Like I say, up until even 3 years ago, it was quite difficult, and most of the seaweed books you get were every seaweed ever, and all sciencey stuff about it, and didn't tell you what was edible or anything. But I mean, as we've learned, you can eat most seaweeds, but they're not all going to taste good. That's the thing, non-toxic and safe to eat. It doesn't necessarily mean tasty. So there's about 11 seaweeds on my menu. Yeah, there it is, food free.
I would say if you don't have a copy of Food for Free, then as soon as this workshop finishes, go and order yourself a copy. It's a fantastic book.
It's a great little book, and it really gives you it's a really good starting guide, I'd say, for most foraging, whether it be land or sea.
It gives little preparation recipes as well throughout. It's a fantastic gateway. I'm just going to spotlight my video because I've also got this book here, which is the River Cottage. They've got a series of them. They've got mushrooms and preserves and jams, and then edible seashore. So this is all seashore, and it has a section on seaweeds as well. It's a very nice book, good pictures and nice identification. And with it being River Cottage, it has some recipe ideas as well.
Yep, that's a good book. And John, he's in the Forages Association. He's in the Association of Forages. But what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, reading that book, it actually really highlights to me that the seasons for seaweeds do differ depending on where you are as well. So even things like wild garlic, everyone down south is all going, oh, wild garlic already. And I'm like, oh, it's still only like this up here. So the seaweeds as well do differ. The seasons will differ a little bit depending on where you live. So, they're an indicator of when to get them.
Yeah, good. So this is a good question. How should you take the seaweed? Cut, grab, rip? Is there a more sustainable way to take?
Yes. So I talk more specifically about this in my Thriving in the title, but scissors basically cut the seaweed. That's the short answer. Cut it, and really it's I use the general foraging idea. So only take a third of an individual, and only ever take a third, no more than a third of all of the plants in an area as well. So specific seaweeds, there is slightly specific ways to cut each one, but generally take a third of it. Don't rip the seaweeds off. That's you're killing it basically. And most seaweeds, if you cut them, they will grow back. So yeah, sharp scissors, cut them. Just be careful walking around on the rocks with scissors.
Thank you. Do you know any forages in East Lothian?
East Lothian, I'm sure there's loads of forages over there off the top of my head.
Association, I'd say.
Yeah, if you want to find forages in your area, look up the Association of Forages, and you can tell them Jason sent you if you like. That'll put me in the good books at the next AGM.
Yeah.
But the Association of Forages is, I think at last count, there was about 150, 170 forages on there. So, you'll find one in your area, but they are all over the show. Actually, we've got members from Aussie and America, Sweden as well.
Cool. I'm just going to drop a link to their website on the chat there, so you can check that out. I've also put Jason's website in there too, so you can check that out as well. Again, I'll be sending these out. The video will be available on Transition Stirling's YouTube with thankful permission from Jason. So I'll be emailing that out too. What are there any differences between East and West Coast seaweeds?
Yeah, east is much better. No, there is a difference, and obviously the weather's so different as well. You know, it's very dry over here. We get a lot more sun. No midgies. There is a big difference because it's also the way the beaches as well. So on the west coast, large parts of the west coast, they've actually got a shelf. It drops away. They've got a big continental shelf there. So there's a lot, you know, and the thing here is that you've got you can walk out for miles and miles and miles. So there is a bit of a difference in general. Most of the seaweeds you'll find there, you'll find here as well. But the seasons are different because of the different weather and the different, you know, the sea temperature as well. That all affects it. So, you know, summer for the water, summer at its warmest is sort of around October. Because it's had all summer to heat up. Right now, it's warming up on land, but the water's going to stay cold for a few more months yet. So, you know, whereas you're different over there, you've got Gulf Stream and you've got, you know, all that rain and everything. So they are different, but they're the same, but they're different. Slightly different seasons. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, it's all hearsay for me, to be honest. I've not actually looked around the West Coast seaweed much, but I do know people over there. So, you know, I'm told, and they'll send me a picture of it, going, look at this, mate, and I'll send a picture, no, look at this, it's better, it's on the East Coast. So yeah, the same but different.
Like jets and sharks.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there's a lot of you know, if you ever get a bit of seaweed, you get seaweed and you age it, dulse, you get the red dulse and you age it for ages, and then all these salts and crystals, sugars will grow on them, and that's what you send to seaweed people. Look at the crystals on this, mate. Oh God, look at that. How long have you been aging that for? But I better not let out all my secrets.
That leads us on to quite a nice question from Daniel and Tor. So how do you age seaweed?
So again, dry it. Some methods. So the dulse, the red dulse, traditionally in Ireland, they would actually take 3 days to dry it. So most of these seaweeds, the slower you dry them, the better, you know. So they would take 3 days to dry it. And traditionally what they'd do is they'd pick it on the beach, they'd build some wooden racks up on the coast, on the, you know, right on the beach, and then they'd hang it there and they'd dry it, and they'd take 3 days. So every night the sea mist would come back and re-moisten the seaweed, and then they'll do that for 3 days, like I say, and then you store it up. But you know, a lot of seaweeds these days, you know, and I've been known to bring it home and you know, chuck it in the dehydrator. And obviously the difference between sun drying over 3 days, you know, on the misty coast of wherever, is going to be a bit different than me chucking it in the dehydrator and drying it in an hour, you know. So a nice slow dry, you can somebody else I know, they put a little bit of salted water into a sprayer and they spray it on, rehydrate it, and then dry it again. So they're trying to emulate that traditional Irish method of, you know, rehydrating it with the sea mist at night, you know. And then it's, you know, get it dry and then just keep it in a nice airtight. To really age it, you actually don't want it 100% airtight. You want a little bit of sort of, you know, moisture getting in there. It's so it's basically dry it out, stick it in a jar, and put it in a nice in the cupboard, and leave it there. It'll do itself, you know. But it is important to get it properly dry before you stick it away. You don't want mold growing on there. I sent some seaweed over to a friend of mine in Sweden, and this was beautiful aged stuff. Had all these sugar crystals growing on it, and he sent me up. I said, "Oh, how is that seaweed?" He's like, "I chucked it out." I was like, "What do you mean?" I chucked it out. I had all this white stuff growing on it. Oh no! I said, if it was green, you chuck it out, mate. If it's white, you don't. You should have told me first. So anyway, he was in the bad books for a while.
So as far as drying goes, Transition Stirling does have a dehydrator that you can borrow when we open again, hopefully very soon. But yeah, you can just put it on your washing line, I guess, as well, to dry it, hang it up there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So some seaweeds are short and small and you won't get them on the clothesline. Kelp's really good. The Alaria is good for that. You can hang it straight on the clothesline, sun dry it, maybe then finish it off in the dehydrator if you like. You know, getting a big piece of kelp and sticking it in your dehydrator. I don't think Stirling Transition is going to be very happy about that. But what you could do is, like you say, hang it on the clothesline, semi-dry it, maybe cut it into shorter bits, and then put it in the dehydrator. And then you get some things like the dulse, the pepper dulse is small anyway. So you can, I just have mesh. I just put a fine mesh out on top of the clothesline, and then you can lay it out there, or don't tell my wife, but I sometimes stick it on the radiators as well. She knows that because if it sits there too long, it's all dripping everywhere. So, you know, you can make a little clothesline above the radiator as well and do it on there. If you don't have a dehydrator, you're not allowed to stick it above the radiator, and you can do it in the oven as well. So on a low heat in the oven, door open, fan at say 40 or 50, the lowest you can get it kind of thing, and dry it out there. Obviously, there's probably a little bit of power consumption happening when you're doing that. So, you know, dehydrators are good, but wherever you can use sun. And I always try to start the process of sun drying it. Then you use less energy, put it in the dehydrator.
Right. I've just read a message that my mum says that the book that I showed is hers. She's obviously watching with my brother. Just put that out there. She gave it to me on long-term loan along with the mushroom book. So it's mine, and I'm going to claim squatters' rights in a couple of years. Okay, where were we? I guess we're a bit over time, but I wonder if you'd answer a question just a little bit about the type of equipment you're using. Is there a special bag or shoes or waterproofs you're using?
Yeah, so I've got some bespoke footwear that I've designed. So it's basically an old pair of welly boots, and I've drilled holes in them so the water goes in and out. So they already had holes in them anyway. But you know, the worst thing when you go to, when you're at the beach and you're walking around and you go into this tidal pool and it goes over your welly boots, and you've got wet feet, wet uncomfortable feet, and it can actually be a bit dangerous because it's heavy, you know. But at the same time, having welly boots is quite good because it has been known, not recently, but when we were commercially harvesting, that was something we had to think about because we'd be up to our waist or up to our necks. Sometimes you couldn't see your feet. So we did have people, and myself, I was one of them. I got my foot stuck in a rock and the tide's coming in and you're stuck. So something with welly boots, so you can slip your foot out and leave the boot, leave the boot there, not leave your foot there. So I have welly boots. I've cut them shorter. I've drilled holes in them, and I have 2 mil neoprene socks that I wear with them. That keeps my feet warm. But what it means is that I can go into any depth of water. It doesn't matter. I'm not worried about getting my feet wet. You know, that's me. I had a pair of welly boots lying about, and but just good wellies. But just be aware that you may go in a bit deeper, or just good waterproof shoes, because it's a potentially slippy environment out there. So the seaweed, you've got this combination of slippery seaweed and hard rocks. You know, the two can be a bit dodgy. So just good firm footwear, maybe older stuff. You don't worry about getting salt water all over it. Or, if you've got an old pair of welly boots around, perfect. Drill some holes in them. Get a pair of neoprene socks you'll get for a couple of quid online. They last for a long time. Or you could do, I had a South African, and we would always take our shoes off. We'd get in trouble. But at the end of the day, we'd take our shoes off and go barefoot. If you're brave, there's my phone call. So I'll just ignore it because I know what they're ringing for. I'll have to get going shortly. And scissors, bags. I like to use cotton bags because they're reusable. Plastic bags, besides the fact that they're plastic, is your seaweed will sweat in there and go a bit slimy and stuff. So I like to use cotton bags. And the beauty with the cotton bags is that they will drain. A lot of the excess water will drain out, but they will hold moisture. So you're getting the best of both worlds there. You're not getting too much water, but you're getting some moisture. and then when I get home, I just stick them straight into a into a tub in the fridge and just leave them in the bag, and until I get around to coming back to it. A lot of people use net bags, and you can get net bags from the supermarkets now as well, and you can get cotton net bags. Thing I find with the net bags is that if they're too fine, stuff can fall through. And also, if you maybe taking, it's not so relevant for me, but if you are driving or catching public transport, the problem with a net bag is that you're going to maybe get some outside contaminants on there. So, yeah, the cotton reusable bags are perfect. I find they're really good. And I also, when I take people out for workshops, I make you wear a helmet. So anyone who's thinking about when we're allowed to come in for a workshop with me, I make you wear a helmet. That's mostly because of my PLI insurance. But to be honest, I actually wear a helmet when I go out as well. I don't care about looking stupid. The thing is that when I'm in, because I also break my rule of, I tell people, try and take someone with you, take a mate with you, go together. It makes it a bit more fun, and then you've also got somebody's safety there. But I break that rule when I go out foraging on my own a lot, and so I wear a helmet because I'm not immune to slipping over. I don't have superpowers, so if I slip over while I'm out there on my own, it's not good. So touch wood, I haven't. But I did have a guy one time, and he was born and bred in this area. He's like, I'm 7th generation. I've been picking whelks. My great-great-grandfather picked whelks. I was born on these rocks. I'm not wearing a helmet. And this is when we were commercially harvesting. And I said, well, no helmet, no job, mate. Oh, wear your helmet. And then 2 days later, he came up to me and he was all pale, and he was like, oh, I slipped over, and thank goodness I had the helmet on. So, and he was born on these rocks. So there you go.
Makes you look professional as well, I think.
Makes you look more professional, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm conscious that you need to be getting off soon. So just to close, I've put Jason's website in there again. Do you have Twitter and Instagram and everything that people can follow you
I've got Instagram, yeah, and on Facebook. Okay. Twitter I don't do. And I only do those ones grudgingly, to be honest with you. But
yeah. And do you have a mailing list? Can people find that on the website?
Yep, I have a mailing list. So on the website, if you go to the website, one of the first things that pops up is you can join the mailing list. So I do a thing titled Tuesdays. So I send out a newsletter. It's monthly. That saves me having to think of something new to say all the time, but I'm not bombarding people. So I put out a monthly title Tuesdays, first Tuesday of the month. So there'll be one of those coming up soon. And we talk about what's coming up in the month and maybe what we've been up to. But also people on the mailing list are first to find out when the workshops are happening. The thing is, everything's been a little bit up in the air at the moment, so I haven't put timetables out on the website much. Just while we're waiting for things to be cleared. Sounds like in a few months' time we might be free again. We can go about. So, but people on the mailing list, you'll get a monthly newsletter from me. It's pretty short and more pictures than anything, but you'll get first offers as well, and sometimes I'll give out discounts and stuff like that. And if you're on the mailing list, you can always ask me questions as well. I'm often happy to answer questions.
Yeah, that's the same for us as well. So I've put our website in, and also the Google Docs form. There is a link to a feedback form. So Jason and I would love for you to fill that in, and I'll share the feedback with you, Jason, when that comes in.
Yep.
And on there is the option to join our mailing list as well. Again, we send out a newsletter every month about the events that we're doing, other interesting information that we have that we want to send to you. Please fill that in, because we're able to bring these workshops to you for free. Thank you very much to those who did donate as well. That's greatly appreciated. But we can do that for free because of our funders, and we can show them with this feedback that we've done a good job, and or if we haven't, then we're at least listening to what you've said. Again, I'll be emailing that out. I'll email out all the links that have been put in the chat from me. Association of Forages, Jason's website, our website. Then if you want to send that reading list when you can, that would be great. I'll be sending that out because I'll need to edit the video and make it look good as well. So that'll be happening probably mid next week. So don't worry if that doesn't come today. It's probably going to be coming around about Wednesday time, hopefully. Good. Thanks. Many thanks coming through there. So thank you very much for your time, Jason. Yeah, so I'm going to go and read my edible seashore book from the River Cottage. My brother, why did the lobster get angry? Because the seaweed. There's always one, isn't there? Always one. Great. Well, thank you very much for that, Jason. And yeah, we'll definitely do that again if you're game. I really enjoyed that.
Yep, no worries. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone. Thanks for listening to me, and nice to see all the old familiar faces, and we should catch up a bit more again, and hopefully everyone will come up and see us in the East Nuke in the summer. Ciao. Sláinte. Bye.